Did you know hypnotherapy has been used for surgery without anesthetic, exploring alien contact, and past life regressions? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest is world-renowned hypnotherapist Steve Burgess. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio here in Southern California, Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and we're on UK Health Radio all weekend long. Guys TV, Guys Radio, thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, it is the interview portion of our show, and today we're going to bring on a new guest who is one of the world's leading hypnotherapists. His name is Steve Burgess, and let me tell you a little bit about him. He specializes in past life regression. He has completed thousands of regression sessions, helping clients with issues including phobias, anxieties, depression, lack of confidence, weight issues, addictions, physical illness, sexual problems, performance anxiety, and most of his work involves using hypnosis to regress people back to the emotional root cause of their problems, often back to previous lifetimes. So he really takes hypnosis to the next level. He's got a YouTube channel, Hypno for All, featuring free hypnotherapy recordings, and he's been featured on TV, national radio, numerous publications, and he's got a new book. It's called The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist, Was I Under? We're going to talk about that today, but he's got another book also, if you're interested in past life regressions. It's called The Power of Past Life Regressions. So, truth be told, I am also a hypnotist, nothing in the league of Steve, but we should have a fruitful conversation. So welcome to Guys Radio, Steve Burgess.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, I'm really thrilled to have you on because I'm a big believer in hypnosis. I don't do it a lot. Sometimes I do it with myself, but I'm curious because when I was in my class, everybody, all different types of people were in the class. And it's just a fascinating discipline and art and science, if you will. Tell us a little bit about what hypnosis is, how you got into it, and what people get wrong about it.
Yeah. Possibly the best way to start is to say what hypnosis isn't, because most people have seen I call it the Hollywood stuff, and it's nothing like that. Hypnosis isn't being in a sleep. It isn't being in a coma or under anesthetic. This is actually, the word under comes in quite often with my clients because they expect to be under my control or under anesthetic. And it's like a bit of a red rag to a bull when a client says after a session, I don't think I was under, because they have this expectation they're going to be under anesthetic in some way. So a trance state is a completely natural state. And most hypnotherapists, we want to emphasize the naturalness of hypnosis. We all go into trance every single day as human beings, at least 24 times a day. So when we daydream, when we driving on automatic pilot in the car and we don't realize we're driving, that's trance, that's hypnosis. When we meditate, meditation is a form of trance. When we drift into sleep, drift out of sleep. When we watch a movie and we become completely absorbed in the movie, that's trance. When we focus on a book. So trance is a natural process, and in a hypnotherapy setting, we tend to emphasize the relaxational elements of trance. So I often say to my clients, think relaxation, and we'll be very much on the right tracks. And there are two aspects to trance. One is relaxing, one is letting the mind become more focused, which allows the deeper mind, the subconscious mind, the 99.9% of the mind to be open, and in which case we can then use it in therapy to heal a vast array of issues. And, it's been said that if you could bottle hypnotherapy, it would be mankind's wonder drug. So that's a bit of a preamble about what a trance is, what it isn't. Think relaxation, and that just allows the subconscious mind to come through, you could say, from the back part to the front part of the mind.
Okay. Tell us about your story, how you got into hypnosis, your personal journey.
Yeah, it was quite by accident. I mean, I would like to sound all nice and spiritual and guru-like and say it was always my destination. The universe had this carved out for me ever since I was a child. No, I was a director of a publishing company 33 years ago, which went bust, and I needed to do something quickly. And so my father had stopped smoking using hypnosis. Now, he couldn't understand why this had worked. Father is a scientist by profession, and it didn't make sense to his left brain. How was it that he went to see this fella who laid him in a comfortable chair, talked to him softly about relaxing, told him that he didn't want cigarettes anymore, and my dad became a non-smoker? And what the heck's that about? It just didn't make sense. So he started to read up about hypnosis, and the more he read, the more fascinated he became. So subsequently, he trained in hypnotherapy and then just played with it as a hobby, working with friends and family and colleagues for a while. So when I was sort of at a loose end, he said, "Why don't you try hypnotherapy?" And I went and trained, and I was very lucky, Robert, because some people are natural therapists in the same way that some people are natural musicians or natural sports people. I'm lucky I was a natural therapist. So it was like coming home. And in my early times, I used what we call basic hypnosis, which is using post-hypnotic suggestion therapy in order to reprogram my clients' subconscious minds in order to help them to change and in order to grow in different ways. But subsequently, I then really focused in regression because I saw just how extraordinarily powerful it is as a healing process.
Now, talk to us about what are the main things that people come to a hypnotherapist for. When I was studying, we were told it's managing your weight, helping people sleep better, becoming a non-smoker, and more self-confidence or relaxation. But always skewed to the positive. It wasn't about quitting smoking. It was about becoming a non-smoker.
Yes.
Those are still the four core tenets, or has it
It's much
changed
wider than that.
dramatically?
It
Okay.
really has changed. I mean, I've been doing this 33 years, and I
Mhm.
think, like as you say, for me, Robert, it was very much like that in my early days. But I've seen enormous changes. So phobias, I mean, most phobias respond very, very well to hypnotherapy and especially to regression. Now, depression is eminently curable using regression. It doesn't always work so well with basic hypnosis, but with regression, it's very curable. As you say, anxieties, physical illness. So a lot of my work is helping my clients with physical illness. It doesn't matter what the physical illness is, there are always emotional causes. So again, in regression, we can open those causes up and heal the physical problem. Sexual issues, relationship issues, really the list is enormous. And um, if just basic hypnotherapy can go so far for many, many people. But I say when we add regression, and it tends to be the missing factor and makes the whole healing process much, much deeper.
Now, when I was a student and also practicing, I found past life regression very interesting, very helpful. When I was first taken under, I found was asked to like locate my great experience, a great lifetime, and one that wasn't that good. In both cases, I learned a lot, and I actually saw people from this lifetime in those lifetimes. I had no idea anything about this. Was before I really got into it. Tell us about the power of regression, why it's so important, and how past lives are connected to this incarnation.
Okay. The regression model is that all of our issues as human beings, and I mean all of our issues, are caused by locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. Whether it's depression, lack of confidence, physical issues, whatever, all of our issues are caused by locked in traumas in the past. And those traumas take place in three different areas in our present lifetime. And that's the most obvious. And we've all got emotional baggage from this life. So a good deal of regression work is about healing emotional wounds from this life, especially childhood. So most of us do a lot of work in terms of healing people's inner child. Past lives is the second area. And the third area are our ancestors' lives. So these are traumas which are inherited from our ancestors in our bloodline. So for some of my clients, I work in all three areas. For others, it's just one area. But what I've found over the years is that for me, past life regression is the most powerful form of therapy I believe that there is on planet Earth. And one reason is it's because it's so effective at releasing trauma, but also, and you actually said there, we often start to get understandings about how we are now because of what's gone on in the past. And very often that understanding is a very powerful form of therapy. Freud called these things insights. When we get insights into things, we can change things, we understand things. And of course, as you said, we've lived so many lifetimes, and the people around us in our present life, whether we like it or not, have been around us in our previous lifetimes in different roles, because obviously we can change sex over many lifetimes. So it may be that, your mother now was your uncle or best friend in a previous life. And just going back to the understanding aspect of things, it may be that somebody, as a result of going back into a past life, they say, there's no wonder my mother's always hated me in this lifetime. There's no wonder she's always been mean to me, because in the past life, I killed her. I stabbed her to death. Mm-hmm. Well, she's going to hate me because of that past life. But when we release that energy, the energy between those two people softens, and naturally they become less antagonistic.
In a case like that, do you need permission, and what is the connection with somebody who's already passed on in the process?
Well, you don't need permission, because obviously it just comes through in a session. Mm-hmm. What we're working on is the dysfunction in my client's life, in whatever way that is. And we don't go looking. Let's say there is a mother issue in this life. We don't say, well, in all of your past lives, you've been brutal to your mother, or she's been brutal to you. We actually just find that along the way, the subconscious knows where we need to go. It takes the client back into the relevant past lives. And quite often it may be that that's where the mother now was in previous lifetimes. And the experiences come through and are released. And the energy is released, the emotion is released. And my client then feels better. And they become less angry towards their mother in this lifetime. They become less reactive. And that's one of the beautiful things of regression therapy. People become less reactive.
Now, if you are being regressed and you have an issue and it's uncovered during the regression, how many sessions do you need? Do you need more than one, two? If you go into that particular past life and it has germane information about what your issue is, can you root it out at that point and that's it?
Can be. I mean, we call them one-hit wonders in the trade. We'll all get one-hit wonders where in one session a client will get better. However, usually it's a course of therapy. For example, there may be several past lives which need to be explored and released. So those, you can't work properly and deeply enough in several past lives in just one session as a rule. So, each past life often will take a session on its own. Okay. So it can be a course of therapy. The good thing is, though, first of all, regression is a radical therapy. So it's not like going to your analyst, where you go for week after week for years and then you don't get any better. If this work doesn't work, it doesn't work quickly. What that means is somebody can just have a few sessions if it obviously isn't working, because not everybody regresses easily. And if somebody doesn't regress, then we just let it go and we advise try something else. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work quickly and we stop the therapy. But sometimes people need extensive therapy. I mean, we see people with, seriously dysfunctional backgrounds, hideous childhoods, very significant problems in this lifetime. And that can take, quite a bit of stamina to work on for the client and the therapist.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my special guest on Guys Radio is Steve Burgess. We're talking about his new book, The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist, rather, Was I Under? So, Steve, can anybody be hypnotized, or do you need the kind of acceptance of the client that I'm willing to be hypnotized? Because my understanding is that if somebody doesn't want to be hypnotized, you really shouldn't hypnotize them, and that you won't be able to.
Yeah. If somebody's resistant, then it's a
Mm,
bit pointless doing it. I mean, look, having said that, some people will naturally go into trance quite easily. But generally speaking, if somebody resists, then we talk about the resistance, and if somebody really doesn't want to do it, then we don't do it. But I've discovered, I've done over 15,000 therapy sessions now, and I've discovered there are four what I call abilities to go into trance. And about 25 to 30% of people are naturally hypnotizable. About 1 in 4 of all people go into trance very easily and very gently. These are people that a stage hypnotist will use and make fools of. So about 25, 30% of people, I call them number ones. They're just naturally very hypnotic. Number twos are people who are good at hypnosis, not as good as very good, but good. They go into trance again quite easily. Number threes are average, and most people are average. So when most people go into trance, they're experiencing relaxation, but they're still very aware of what's going on around them. Where a number one will be deeply relaxed and very focused inside themselves. But a number four, they're just crap at hypnosis. Just doesn't suit them. And to be honest, Robert, it's nearly always controlling men.
mhm. I don't doubt that. So if somebody, let's say they don't believe in past lives or reincarnation,
Yeah.
do you suggest then like to use like what if, get them in a what if to be more malleable in terms of and open to the possibilities? Because as you mentioned, and we've talked about prior to the broadcast, a lot of times older guys, they're pretty set in their ways and it's hard to kind of crack them. And
Yeah.
sometimes, what do you do when you get these kind of hard-headed people?
Well, first of all, it doesn't matter whether somebody believes in past lives or not. If they go into a past life in a good regression session, they will get better. Now, in that case, it's up to them what they believe. Often I'll just say, well, this could have been a metaphor, a historical metaphor created by your subconscious in order to help you to get better. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter whether they believe or not. The subconscious knows that past lives are real because it will guide them into a past life to get them better. So but ultimately, if somebody really is very much against it, then it's probably best for them not to bother at all and go and try a different healing modality. I mean, what I will say though, I remember some years ago, I had a gentleman who came, actually going back to what you were saying about the speed with which some people get better. One lady came who was a functional alcoholic, and she was working every day as a probation officer. But she got home at 6 o'clock on a night and started drinking. By 9 o'clock, she was absolutely drunk. And she didn't have a life. She was horribly overweight. She felt dreadful in herself. She had bad asthma. Her skin looked terrible. And she actually came to me to prove that I couldn't help her. A friend of hers said, go and see this bearded hippie fella or whatever and see if he can help you. Oh, he won't be able to help me with my problem. I'm alcoholic. So she came to me. I guided her into trance. A subconscious, after we talked as well, because there was no trauma in her present life that could account for this severe alcoholism. She had a very normal life. A subconscious, when she went into trance, took her into a past life, and she just spent an hour crying, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing for an hour. We didn't see what the past life was. She wasn't too visual that day, but she felt it. There's a lot of sadness. She came out of trance at the end of the session. She has not touched a drop of alcohol since that day. It was a complete cure in one session. Now, I wish that happened all the time, Robert. I'd be a millionaire. We did further past life sessions, and she was a soldier in World War One, where she was killed on the Western Front. She was a sailor in olden times on a galleon eating rotten ship's biscuits. She was a Christian being killed in an amphitheater by the Romans, being torn to pieces by lions. So we did a lot more work, and it completely healed her. So that now, I mean, this is like 30 years ago. She still hasn't touched a drop of alcohol in 30 years. Her boyfriend came to me, who also was an alcoholic. And this man was a very powerful barrister in London, one of the top barristers in London. And he sat in front of me in my office in those days and he said, don't even talk to me about past lives, Burgess, because I don't believe in them. I'm a Roman Catholic. I said, well, not a problem. We'll just see where your subconscious wants us to go. Now, what I use, Robert, is a technique in hypnosis we call an ideomotor response. And I don't know whether you trained in that when you did your training. But what this means is that when my client is in trance, I ask the subconscious to take control of a finger by making the finger completely weightless and free, and it just moves all by itself. And we use that movement as a means of signaling yes to any of my questions. If the subconscious wants to signal no, the finger just remains static. So once he was in trance, I asked his subconscious, are there any emotional causes in the past causing the need to drink alcohol? Because alcoholism, as with any addiction, is about anesthetizing inner emotional pain with the substance. And his subconscious said, yes, there's emotional stuff. Anything in this lifetime? Yes. So we now knew that there was some trauma in this life. Are there any past lives? And his finger went straight up in the air. And the look on his face as he was laid in trance, because he knew his finger had said yes. And inside he's thinking, I don't believe in past lives. But his subconscious said there's a past life here. And it wanted to work on that past life in the session. He went back, and I'll give him his due, he did go with it. He went back into the French Revolution, where he was a male aristocrat who was passionately in love with another noblewoman. As a result of the revolution, they got separated, and she was taken abroad for safety. And he then never saw her again. He'd lost the love of his life. And he survived the revolution, but then he had all the rest of his life feeling the yearning for her and how much he missed her because he didn't know where she'd gone to. And that yearning inside of him, his way of anesthetizing that emotional pain was through alcohol. So he came out of trance at the end of the session and was a bit like, well, what the hell was that about? What was that all about? Because I don't believe in past lives. So I said, well, maybe you need to sort of start looking at this more seriously and change your belief habits and change your belief systems, sorry. Or it could have just been a metaphor that your subconscious created to help you to let go of the alcohol. It didn't matter. Either way, it was there to help to get better.
And that was a trigger for him to get better, to heal?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
Good start.
Now, for folks, Steve, a lot of people think that they were famous in past lives. I'm sure you get that a lot. And my understanding is that's usually not the case.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us about that.
It's often the accusation made against us past life regressionists. Everybody claims to have been Henry VIII or Cleopatra in a past life. Well, for the first 10 years of my career, I would honestly say that if I heard anybody say they'd been famous in a past life, I'd just say that was ego, pure ego. Because all of my client sessions clients have been just ordinary people in past lives, soldiers, peasants, slaves, shopkeepers, whatever. But then my world changed quite dramatically when a lady called me out of the blue and she said, I wonder if you can help me. I work in an office, and a man that I'm a good friend with, we're not in a relationship, we're just good pals. He passed me a file the other day and our hands touched. And immediately I had like an electric shock which ran through my body, and an image came into my mind's eye, which I cannot get out of my head, of a woman with long reddish coloured hair in big, long, old-fashioned dress, and a real feeling of frustration inside me. And I cannot get rid of this frustration or this image. What is it? So, resisting the urge to say, have you been drinking vodka too much or smoking something? I said, it could be past life. Come and see me. As she came to see me, I guided her back in trance to that image. And she went into a past life where she was this young woman, like a noble woman hundreds of years ago, in an old oak paneled room, pacing the floor in frustration. And she was, when she was in trance in the chair, she was strumming her fingers on the side of the chair. She was so agitated. And she is, where is he? Where is he? She kept saying, I'm waiting for him. And then this man came in the room, dressed in all these ornate, old-fashioned clothes, and they fell into each other's arms, and it was all huggy and kissy stuff. And I thought, okay, well, this is just a standard past life. They've just the lovers in the past life. But then I took her a little bit further on into the life, And what happened shocked me, because she saw herself sitting on a throne with hundreds of people looking at her. And a man came over and bowed, and he said, "Your Majesty," to her. And I thought, oh, wow, what is this?
You got one.
To cut a long story short, Robert, we found out that she's the reincarnation of Queen Elizabeth I.
Oh my gosh.
And we then did a load of sessions putting flesh on what is historically known, the love affair between Elizabeth and Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. And she came up with a lot of information, which I had to look in history books. She'd never studied Elizabeth. She'd always been fascinated with her. I had to look in history books, and she got a lot of information absolutely spot on and correct. A few months later, I began working with another lady who, again, to cut a long story short, appears to be Elizabeth's elder sister, Queen Mary, or Bloody Mary, as we know her in the UK. And this lady was a housewife from Middle England, never read a word of history in her life, hated history. But in her regressions, the specific detailed information that she came up with, I ferreted around in history books and managed to find in every case it was true. There is no way on earth that woman would have known this information. I know a fair bit about history. I didn't know this stuff. So it was then that not the floodgates opened, but over the years, I've then worked with quite a few people. And in fact, my first book was Famous Past Lives, where I write about the famous stuff. But more recently, I've been working with a client in Canada who appears to be the reincarnation of Alexandra, the wife of Tsar Nicholas II. And of course, her and her family were murdered by the Bolsheviks at the start of the revolution in 1917. And the misery that my client experienced in all of the sessions showed, and I again looked in the biographies of Alexandra, what a miserable existence that poor woman had. So yeah, once upon a time I would say it was all ego. Now it doesn't happen very often, but it occasionally happens that I'm working with somebody who is famous.
Okay, Steve Burgess, my special guest on Guys Radio, the new book, The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist, Was I Under? Steve, my experience in being having past life regressions done was, and this might be interesting for our audience if you could kind of flesh it out. One, I was always me. Most of the time I was a guy, and most of the time, every time I was who I am. I might have had different jobs, but I was who I am. The second thing is some of the positions I have, the work I was doing was similar to the work I've done in this lifetime. For instance, in one, I was in the advertising business, and I was a conduit between, I was like general manager and president of an agency where I worked with the creatives and I worked with the account people. I worked with the clients, kind of keep everybody happy. Well, one of the past lives that was shown to me, I was like a scout between the cavalry and the Native Americans during some of their uprisings. And that was a similar, I had to kind of keep the peace and be a communicator. Have you found in your work, Steve, that most people are who they are, just in a different sex or a different time frame, or are they different people altogether when they go back? And secondly, does every client experiences by seeing and witnessing their death, their demise, in an unemotional way at the end of each session?
Okay, so there's two questions there. First of all, we do tend to bring in traits from past lives. So we do tend to have a sort of an underlying meanness, you could say, that comes from life to life to life. However, sometimes we are very different in a past life to now. So we can't always tell. Usually in therapy, we are the victim in a past life, or we can just have a neutral past life where not very much happens. Occasionally we are the aggressor. So, but we do bring through traits. So for example, my eldest son, all my children are very musical. My eldest son is a genius guitarist, rock musician. When he was 7, I put my guitar into his hands, and his hands went exactly where a guitarist would play. And I said to my wife, I said, he's a guitarist, he's natural. Whereas my youngest son was a natural pianist. And when he sat at a piano, instead of banging away with one finger, his hands, all the fingers moved on the keyboard. Now, with number one son, I did some regression work on him. And oh, by the way, he was always obsessed with the Beatles. As a kid, he was always obsessed with the Beatles. And this is like in the early 90s. We found in regression that in his previous life before this one, he went to see the Beatles live in England when they played in the 60s. And he was a drummer in an amateur band. And of course, he's a genius drummer now. So he's brought those traits and those abilities through from his past life. So to answer your question, it's a bit of both. Sometimes we are quite similar over several lives as to how we are now. And sometimes it's very, very different. The second thing you were sharing there about deaths in past lives, most regression therapy is death trauma therapy. So I have a client killed day after day in my, I do all the work online nowadays, but I do, everything is online, and it works just as effectively online as it used to do in-house. But yeah, I have clients dying day after day, and of course you can't die in now. It's just an energy from the past. So it is often past life deaths that are causing the problems. Occasionally, my clients experience these deaths really quite dramatically. Now, generally, most people are crying or shaking. That's how we release a lot of the trauma, through the tears or through the body shaking. Very occasionally, a client goes into something in a big way, and they may be screaming and writhing and yelling and choking and gasping as they're being strangled or hung or something like that. And that can be dramatic, but it releases the problem so fast. It's worth every bit of unpleasantness for my client, because at the end of the session, they're completely free.
Now, when you're dealing with somebody who has an issue in this lifetime, could it be something like this? Somebody says, I'm afraid of the water. I don't know why, but I'm afraid of the water. Well, they weren't born into this lifetime afraid of the water, but maybe when they were 2 years old, they were at the pool with their mom, and the mom was flirting with the lifeguard, and they fell in the pool, and it took a while to get them out. And since then, they've been afraid of the water. Do you do what is it, like a parts therapy or whatever? How do you deal with that type of situation where the issue is from this lifetime only?
Yeah. Well, a good example of this, a client came to me with a dog phobia. And this was a severe phobia of dogs. I mean, she could hardly leave home. She very rarely went out of the house in case she saw any dogs anywhere. And she came to see me and said, I'm going to the States to visit my daughter in a few weeks. And they've got a dog. And last year they had to put the dog in kennels. It's not fair on the dog or the family. I asked her if there was anything, she'd had it all of her life, but she didn't know anything that had caused it. Her subconscious indicated that it was from childhood. And I guided her back into when she was about 2 to 3 years old. And Mommy was going to take her to the park to see the ducks at the duck pond. Mommy put her in I think you call them strollers in the States.
Mm-hmm.
In England,
Yes.
we call them buggies.
Mm-hmm.
Put her in a buggy and fastened her in so she couldn't get out. And this is my client's explaining this in trance. This is memories that she'd forgotten about that came through while she's in hypnosis, laid there in the chair. And she had a big smile on her face. She said, I've got to the duck pond, and Mommy's parked me at the duck pond, put the brake on, and she's gone off to talk to a friend. Oh, the ducks are there. And she had a lovely big smile on her face as she's remembering seeing the ducks on the duck pond. And then suddenly she became very tense. Her head started to move away from one side and pull over to the left. And she started to get very agitated and upset. And she suddenly swiped out with her right hand in the chair in trance. And the next thing, she was screaming and crying and screaming and crying. It's a dog, it's bit me. She said, it's bit me. And it had bitten her on the face. And of course, Mommy runs over and then shoos the dog away. And that was the trauma. So all we had to do was release the trauma. Mm-hmm. And the phobia was cured. Mm-hmm. She came out of trance. She said, I remember that now. I've forgotten that all of my life. A few weeks later, a few months later, there was a knock at my office door. The lady is standing there. She said, I brought some photographs to show you. And she's got a photograph with herself sitting in the back of a car with her arm around this dirty, great big dog. And another one with the dog sitting at her feet with its head laid in her lap, looking adoringly up at her. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, generally, we don't have to do very much apart from release the emotion. Occasionally, we'll do extra stuff, but not as a rule.
How do you release the emotion then? What do you do?
It's just by letting the client cry or sob or shake.
Mhm.
The body often
Okay.
jerks by shaking.
Okay.
And it's not a fun process, Robert. I don't make any bones about it. It's not fun, but it is effective. And provided the therapist knows what they're doing, it is absolutely safe. And that's the most important thing.
I think one of the misnomers people have about hypnosis is they think that the hypnosis is doing the work, where
Mhm.
really we have to be participatory in the process. I'll give you an example. In 1990, I wanted to become a non-smoker. So I went to a hypnotherapist, and she said, "Why do you want to quit?" And I told her fitness goals, and I just didn't like the smell of my clothes. I just thought it was a waste of time, etc. So I went under, and 2 months, for 2 months, I couldn't even say the word, which I still have a problem saying it, as you can tell. So I didn't say that word. I wouldn't see it in a store. I wouldn't notice when other people were doing it. Then I was at an industry event, and I started having some tequila. And I'm like, oh, I can just turn this on and off. So I lit up. And then for that night, I started again. And then I realized the next day I had the craving. I went back, we did it again, as I realized that I have to do it. I can't, this is not the hypnotherapist. It's me,
Mm.
I have to participate in this. So I went back, she put me under again, and that was 35 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. With any issue, you still have to do something. If you're overeating cream cakes,
Right.
then you don't just stop eating. You have to physically have some discipline to not buy the things in the first place. So yes, but it's a sort of a bit of both. It makes it easier to stop. So that's always been my phrase for clients to stop smoking. It makes it easier for you to be a non-smoker. Whereas if you did it yourself, that's 100% effort. That's horribly hard work. With hypnotherapy, you're usually putting about 15% effort in, maybe 25, sometimes less than that, occasionally 1% effort. But there's still that little bit of effort is needed. You're absolutely right, Robert. It's not, but then again, at times it can be magical.
Mhm.
There are extraordinary experiences some clients have in the chair or on screen, as I should say, where the most horrible issue is fixed so quickly and they forget the issue ever occurred. They actually forget that they had a phobia of deep water.
Mhm.
It's like people say, don't you remember? I said, no, that wasn't me. Oh, yes, it was. I forgot. So, it's extraordinary. Once we start using the mind in the right way, we can achieve so many incredible things.
Now, Steve, you mentioned in your notes about life-saving surgery without any anesthetic. One of my
Mm.
teachers claimed that he did like oral surgery on himself without anything. And I'm
Mm.
like, really? Talk to us about self-hypnosis and how powerful it can be.
Mm. The good thing about self hypnosis is it's easy to do. And certainly anybody who meditates is doing self hypnosis generally, just in a slightly different way. But for those people who want to learn self hypnosis, it's so easy to do. You just learn how to guide yourself into trance, how to focus your mind inside. And then you can use that trance state. It's usually for most people a gentle hypnotic state when they first do their own self hypnosis. With practice, you can go into deeper states of trance. But it's then using that trance state in the right way. So just using it for relaxation is a wonderful thing. Most people don't realize that about 15 to 20 minutes in trance, the endorphins are naturally released into our bloodstream. The body's healing chemicals are released into the bloodstream about 20 minutes in trance. But you can actually do a lot more. So when you're in trance, start using positive affirmations and positive suggestions. I am now strong. I am now confident. I am now calm, etc. And with affirmations, you never say what you don't want. You don't say, I'm not going to be anxious. If you say anxious, your mind hears anxious. It makes you anxious. It will give you anxious. What do you want? I want to be calm. I want to be relaxed. I am now at peace with myself and fully relaxed. So, using the affirmations in the right way. Also, visualizing how do you be? See yourself, feel yourself. Most important thing is to feel what you want to achieve. So, if you want to be more confident in yourself, or if you want to have a better job, run movies in your mind's eye of yourself being like that, but feel that feeling in your body as if it's already there. because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between now and yesterday and 1500 years ago. It just knows what is. If you keep feeding it with positive feelings and suggestions, it will take you there.
The art of manifestation. Well articulated, Steve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank
So
you.
I got time for one more question. I have so much I want to ask you, but let me ask you about this one because I think everybody can relate to it. And that is a lot of alien in the term of that they've heard of this, alien abductions. And it seems to be more and more prevalent with disclosure kind of on the way. What have you learned from alien abductions through therapy?
It rarely used to happen, but occasionally I'd get a client who would come with an issue and their subconscious would take them to either a contact experience with extraterrestrials or an abduction experience where they were taken away and something unpleasant happened to them. And it would occasionally happen. It's very strange in the last couple of years what's been happening for me and my team, because I have a team of hypnotherapists that I pass work to because I'm very busy. And we've all found that more and more clients are coming for therapy. In order to heal them, the subconscious is taking them back into a past life on other planets.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like one step further on than just a standard abduction and contact regressions, which we do occasionally. By the way, I will say that hypnosis, when it's done correctly, is a wonderful means for unlocking potential abduction and potential contact experiences, provided the therapist doesn't lead the client anywhere.
Okay.
But more and more people are going back to past lives where they've been on other planets, and they're reborn now on planet Earth. And we say that they're coming here as star seeds.
Amazing. Steve Burgess, my special guest on Guys Radio, The Adventures of a Hypnotherapist Was I Under, the new book. Steve, amazing work. I hope you'll come back because I got a lot more questions for you. And I think people really need to learn more about the benefits of hypnotherapy because it can be very powerful in a positive way. So tell everybody where they can learn more about you, maybe book a session, get your book, etc.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yes, so it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the usual booksellers. My website, steveburgesshypnosis.com, which gives more details about me. My YouTube channel, which I love people to go on, is called Hypno for All, HYPNO, the number 4, ALL. And there are free hypnotherapy recordings on there to help people who can't afford to pay for therapy. It's my way of giving back to the world because I've been so lucky with my career. So there are recordings on there for irritable bowel syndrome, for anxiety, for all sorts of things, weight loss, as well as a lot of videos that I've made regarding the different aspects of regression with my team, and also a couple of filmed past life regression videos where I'm working with one of my team members to help her with her phobia of deep dark water. Facebook is the power of past life regression. That's my previous book. And of course, I'm on Instagram, even though I don't understand anything about Instagram. What I would ask is one quick request, if I may, Robert, just very quickly. I recorded a pilot episode, a TV show last year based on past life regression. And I'm trying to get it out into the American TV production community, which is very difficult when you're an outsider, if you're not already in that. So if any of your viewers or listeners know of anybody in the TV world or the movie world, especially the TV world, who may be interested in have a look at it, please get in touch with me because I think there's a great market for past life regression on TV done in an intelligent way.
Fantastic. Steve Burgess, hope you come back. Guys Radio, thanks for being here. Everybody check out his work and the new book, Was I Under? Adventures of a Hypnotherapist. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Robert. Great to be with you. I'd love to come back. Thank you.
If you enjoy the guests and content I bring you each and every week to Guys TV and Guys Radio, please support us by subscribing to our channels and platforms. Thank you.